The NFL draft is less than 3 weeks away, and as we inch closer, people start to get more excited, mock drafts start to get crazier, and people start throwing out some trade scenarios. Now, you guys know me, I'm not a big fan of trades, but today we're going to talk about what the Texans should do in the draft. Should they stay put? Should they trade up? Or should they trade down? Now, obviously, if they stay put, they run the risk of not getting the player they really want. For example, if they want, Andre Dillard, he might not be there. If they want DeAndre Baker, Greedy Williams, there's a good chance they might not be there. But there's also a chance that they land a really good player that falls to them due to other teams reaching for all these other players, whether it's a quarterback, whether it's an offensive lineman, or anything out there. They can realistically get a top talent at 23 if they stay put, but of course it means they miss out on a player that they really like. And if we're being real here, there is nobody besides the Texans that know what the Texans will do on draft day, because Brian Gaine has only been here 1 year, and you can't really judge him off of that 1 year, especially if you consider the fact that he didn't have a first round pick or a second round pick. He didn't end up picking to the third, but some people are over here, Brian Gaine likes to do this, Brian Gaine likes to do that. Well, you could base that off of one draft, but that's just a small sample size. You can't really go off of that, but you really can't predict what they'll do. They could stay put, but they could also trade up if, there's a run on offensive linemen, or if they're picking a corner, there's a run on corners, or, maybe they trade back. Who knows? But I will say this. There's a lot of people that are saying we should wait to the second round to pick an offensive lineman, because, yes, this is a really deep offensive line class, but the Texans aren't the only team that need an offensive lineman. There is plenty of teams in the NFL that need an offensive lineman. In the NFL, there's an offensive line problem. Every team seems to need one. That's just the way it is right now. So, here are some teams that could possibly take an offensive lineman. You got the Jets at 3, the Giants at 6, the Jaguars at 7, the Bills at 9, the Bengals at 11, the Panthers at 16, the Giants again at 17, the Vikings at 18, the Seahawks at 21, and then there's us, the Texans, at 23. That is a bunch of teams ahead of us that could possibly take an offensive lineman. That is 8 teams ahead of us that I could see taking an offensive lineman. And that doesn't include another team that could trade up in front of us to take an offensive lineman. So the chances of us getting a top offensive lineman at 23, it's pretty tough, man. Because look, these are all the first round worthy offensive linemen in my opinion. You got Jonah Williams, Jawan Taylor, Andre Dillard, Dalton Reisner. You could make, a case for Greg Little. Personally, I wouldn't pick him in the first round, but I could see some other team picking him in the first round due to his potential. He is too raw in my opinion to be a first rounder. I wouldn't want the Texans to get him in the first round, but another team could get him. That team could even be the Texans, who knows. And then there's also Chris Lindstorm, Cody Ford, and Garrett Bradbury. Those last 3 are interior offensive linemen, so those guys are pretty much not guys we're going to target. If we're going to pick an offensive lineman in the first round, we're going to pick an offensive tackle. So for us, it's Jonah Williams, Jawan Taylor, Andre Dillard, Dalton Reisner, maybe Greg Little. Those are 5. there's 8 teams ahead of us that could possibly pick an offensive lineman. So the chances of us getting an offensive lineman at 23 isn't looking too good. You kind of have to hope that these teams don't pick offensive linemen. Of course, not each and every single one of these teams are going to pick an offensive lineman. I'm not saying that. But there's a good chance that these teams could pick an offensive lineman. And this year, there's a lot of offensive linemen that are worth a first-round pick. After that, you kind of fall off. So a lot of people seem to have this idea in their head that, you know, when people say this class, this draft class, has a lot of good offensive linemen, this does not mean that you're going to be able to get an offensive lineman in round 2 or round 3 that are good. No. It means that if you pick an offensive lineman late in the first round or in the first round, there's a great chance that that offensive lineman is going to be good. It's a top-heavy class. Once you kind of start to go to the bottom, it's not that good in my opinion. There are some people talking about Max Sharping in the second round. That guy is a development project. Titus Howard, another development project. Those guys aren't day one starters. Of course, you got, you know, David Edwards as well. Yodny Kajust. Other than those guys, I don't see any other offensive tackles that the Texans could take in the second round that would impact day one, because everyone else, in my opinion, is a project player. And there is no way that the Texans can afford to do that. There is no way. They need someone that can go in there and be good from day one. Our O-line's so bad that we can't afford to pick a project player in round 2. Now, if you were to ask me, would I trade up for an offensive lineman? Yes, I think the Texans should trade up. If I were GM, I would trade up. Where would I trade up? I've said this before. Well, back then, it was the Browns pick, but I would call up the Giants. You know, hey, I'll trade you my 23rd pick, and, you know, this might sting a bit, but a 3rd rounder for that 17th pick. I don't know if that's too much. I think if we had a 4th rounder, it would most likely get it done. But we don't have a 4th rounder, unfortunately. We traded that for Demaryius Thomas. I don't think a 5th rounder gets it done, but, you know, you could throw in a 5th rounder first and see if that works. If not, I think you kind of had to throw in a 3rd. And I know it hurts a lot, but I'd rather not have a 3rd than to have a crippled Deshaun Watson. I think you got to do what you got to do to protect Deshaun Watson. Because, look, if you move up to 17, that means you eliminate the Seahawks, Vikings, who I both think are definitely going to take an offensive lineman, and you also eliminate the Giants because obviously they're trading back with you. So now that just puts you in a position where the Jets, Giants, Jaguars, Bills, Bengals, Panthers could all take an offensive lineman. Those are 6 teams ahead of you. And let's be honest, not all 6 of those teams are going to pick an offensive lineman, because not all of them only need offensive linemen. Some of them need other things. So they'll probably end up picking something else, and one of the top first-round talent offensive linemen will fall to the Texans at 17. Now, as far as corners go, there's only 3 that I consider first-round picks. And you guys know who those are. Greedy Williams, DeAndre Baker, and Byron Murphy. I don't think this corner class is that good. And that's just me. There is no Jalen Ramsey, Denzel Ward, Marshawn Lattimore in this draft class. There isn't. Are there good corners? Yeah. But they're not crazy good like some other prospects in past years. Now, this kind of creates a problem for the Texans. Because if there's only 3 corners that are worth a first-round pick, teams are going to reach. Don't be surprised if these guys are gone at 23. I actually see no way that, you know, Baker, Murphy, or Greedy Williams are there for the Texans at 23. Could they trade up for one of them? I don't know. I think they'll probably be gone. Who knows? But that's just my take on the corners. And regardless, I don't see the Texans picking a corner in the first round. I think the fact that they brought in Bradley Roby kind of changes that. I think if the Texans wouldn't have brought in Bradley Roby, I think there would have been a chance for a corner in the first round. But they brought him in. I think it has to be offensive tackle. I mean, the Texans, since, the Senior Bowl, they've been meeting with offensive linemen like crazy. So, that Senior Bowl, scouting combine, they were pretty much meeting with every top prospect. So, the first pick is probably going to be an offensive lineman. Now, in terms of trading back, the other day on Twitter, actually yesterday, well, depends if you watch the video today when I'm dropping it, but I put out a poll on Twitter asking if the Texans traded back in the first round and picked up an extra third, would you be mad? And surprisingly, 58% of people chose no. And I was expecting the numbers to be like 80% being mad at it, but I was actually kind of surprised. But regardless, it was a pretty close poll. Now, I wouldn't necessarily be pissed because we do need some depth, but I would be a little bit upset because that means we'd probably miss out on some talent. That means we probably missed out on a first round offensive tackle. The corners are going to be gone by then. And the scenarios I had for, a trade back was either trading with Green Bay or New England. Green Bay has the 30th overall pick, and obviously New England has 32. Trading back with them and picking up an extra third round pick. That was my scenario because obviously the Texans need depth. They need, obviously, offensive tackles, 2 of them, left tackle, right tackle. They need another corner. They need a third down back, maybe even a starting running back, depending on how they see it. An interior pass rushing defensive lineman. They need a safety now. They need some wide receiver help to back up Will Fuller and DeAndre. So they have quite a bit of holes to fill. So I wouldn't be too mad if they traded back and picked up an extra pick. Maybe in the 3rd round, possibly the 4th round. I wouldn't be too mad, but in my opinion, if the Texans trade back in the draft, it means they missed out on an offensive lineman. Because I do not see a scenario where the Texans trade back and still end up getting, a Dalton Rice or someone like that. So by now, I'm pretty sure you guys can tell what I would do, what I want, what I think the Texans should do. And I think they should trade up. I think the Texans should do everything in their power in this draft to protect Deshaun Watson. They have to. Last year's O-line was bad. 62, 63 sacks? We need an offensive tackle, whether it's left tackle or right tackle. They need someone. And they gotta do what they gotta do to protect Deshaun Watson. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys for today. That's my opinion on what the Texans should do on draft day. Comment down below your own opinions on what they should do on draft day. And be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.